Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. Tonight we take a closer look at the murder that has shaken India, the killing of the journalist Shujaat Bukhari, one of Kashmir's most widely respected editors. The Deputy Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir is on the show tonight, as is Omar Abdullah. Now today, thousands came out at Shujaat Bukhari's funeral in North Kashmir. Family, friends, colleagues and politicians across party lines. Also remember today, the two policemen guarding Shujaat Bukhari also shot and killed. Now, police so far have not named any specific group for the killings, but they say this is a terrorist attack. Today, they released images of a fourth suspect, a man seen removing something from the pocket of those killed. This man has been taken into custody. All right, joining me tonight on the phone line from Srinagar is my colleague Zafar Iqbal. Now, Zafar, just quick word first on the funeral, which clearly appears to have been a very, very emotional affair.
Yes, that's right, Vasu. In fact, the mortal remains were taken to Kiri in Baramulla, where he originally comes from. A lot of people, journalists, his colleagues, his friends and family members, all of them have descended onto Kiri, and you saw those pictures. Large number of people who took out, the body in the shape of sort of a procession, and then it was laid to rest. The Namaz Janaza was performed there. So clearly, it's a loss, big loss for the journalistic fraternity here. He has been an inspiration for many. He's mentored a lot of young journalists in the valley. He was one person who was always accessible. He was widely traveled and had a lot of knowledge about things, and that's what he stood apart from others, and he commanded a lot of respect in the valley. And today we saw people from all walks of life really going to Kiri and taking part in the final rites.
Right. And Zafar, now as far as the questions over who could have been responsible for the killing, I know that the police have said that they are still looking into it. They released this fourth video of this man who's appears to be picking up or trying to remove some weapons from the location. Do we have any greater clarity on the sorts of groups that they might believe could be behind the killing?
Well, the police say clearly that it's an act of terror, and clearly there was a plot to assassinate Shujaat just the time he stepped out from his office. But the investigations are still underway. They released image yesterday of three men on the motorcycle who they called suspects. They've already asked the people to give any details about them. And today another photograph was released of a fourth man who the police have taken into custody. He was removing a pistol from one of the PSOs of Shujaat, who was also killed in that firing. Now, a special investigation team has been formed, which is being led by the DIG of Central Kashmir. We're told by our sources that the police that the conspiracy was hatched in Pakistan, and they're still trying to find out that who are the ones who executed this attack. All the dots are being joined, and the investigations are still underway. The police is seeking help and cooperation of the people to nab all those attackers who carried out this attack yesterday.
Right. All right. Thanks very much indeed, Zafar Iqbal, for joining us from Srinagar. Okay, I spoke earlier this evening to Kavinder Gupta, the Deputy Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, and I began by asking him that it is, of course, a very, very unfortunate thing that has happened, the murder of Shujaat Bukhari. But are we beginning to get a little closer to understand who could have been behind it? क्या गुप्ता जी बता सकते हैं कि कौन हो सकता है इसके पीछे?
ऐसा है कि आपकी जानकारी के लिए सीसीटीवी फुटेज तो आई थी, लेकिन अभी पूरी तरह से पता नहीं लग पाया है। मैं अभी सुरक्षा बलों से जो हमारी एजेंसीज हैं, हमारे ऑफिसर्स हैं, उनके बात चल रही है। जब भी कोई इस प्रकार की सूचना आएगी तो आपको उसके लिए इन्फॉर्म किया जाएगा।
जी, तो इस वक्त ब्लेम गेम का वक्त नहीं है, लेकिन तब भी कोई क्या सवाल उठाए जा रहे हैं कि ये अटैक कैसे हुआ? क्या कोई प्रायर इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं था?
इसके बारे में तो अभी मुझे कोई ऐसा बताया नहीं गया है, लेकिन ये जो भी हुआ, मुझे लगता है कि प्लान्ड मर्डर है। ये जो इस प्रकार की जो घटना ना हो आगे से, इसके लिए हम पूरी तरह से चिंतित हैं। शुजात बुखारी का, एक पत्रकार का, बड़े पत्रकार का इस प्रकार से हत्या करना एक और बीच बाजार में बड़ा ही चिंता का विषय है। मुझे लगता है कि सिक्योरिटी का रिव्यू करेंगे और नई रणनीति के तहत जो भी काम होगा उसको किया जाएगा।
आपने कहा कि एक प्लान्ड अटैक है। क्या आप बिलीव करते हैं कि ये अटैक, जो इस वक्त जो सीज फायर चल रहा है, रमजान सीज फायर, उसके माहौल को बिगाड़ने के लिए किया गया?
देखो, कोई इस प्रकार की घटना होती है, सुरक्षा की चूक तो रहती ही है, लेकिन हालात को देखते हुए आगे से उसको बेहतर बनाया जाए, इस प्रकार की कोशिश रहती है। जो कि मुझे जो लगता है कि लोकल इन्वॉल्वमेंट के बिना इस चीज़ को अंजाम देना कोई आसान नहीं था। कहीं ना कहीं लोकल इन्वॉल्वमेंट या कुछ लोगों ने जो उनको गाइड किया होगा वो रहा होगा इस सारी घटनाक्रम के बीच में।
जी, क्या आप मानते हैं कि इस घटना के बाद जो सीज फायर एक्सटेंशन की जो बात चल रही है, क्या सीज फायर एक्सटेंड अब हो सकता है या अब नहीं होगा?
सीज फायर तो देशों के बीच में होता है, ना कि मिलिटेंट्स के साथ। हमने सस्पेंशन ऑफ ऑपरेशन जरूर किया था, लेकिन हमारी तरफ से ये प्रयास था कि हमारी तरफ से कोई गोली नहीं चलेगी। अगर सामने से कोई एक्शन आता है तो उसका रिएक्ट किया है। तो पिछले दिनों में आपने देखा होगा कि बहुत से मिलिटेंट्स इस रमज़ान के महीने के दौरान मारे भी गए हैं, लेकिन सुरक्षा बलों ने संयम से काम लेने की कोशिश की। हमने रमज़ान के महीने के दौरान एक गुडविल जेस्चर दिया था और हुर्रियत को भी कहा था कि अगर आप संविधान के दायरे में बात करना चाहते हो तो आप आ सकते हैं, लेकिन उधर से रिस्पॉन्स कोई नहीं आया।
ओके, तो आप कह रहे हैं कि इसको बिल्कुल रूल आउट किया जा रहा है। थैंक यू वेरी मच इंडीड। सो दैट वाज कविंदर गुप्ता देयर, डेप्यूटी चीफ मिनिस्टर of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, one of those that we saw in our images earlier on attending the funeral of Shujaat Bukhari was Omar Abdullah, former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, a leader of the National Conference. I spoke to him as well earlier, and I began by asking him that clearly from the series of tweets that he sent out, he appeared very, very upset with the death of Shujaat Bukhari. But the question that all of us have been grappling with is, what could it be that may have led to his death? Now, it's been repeatedly said that he died because he was speaking the truth, but that's somewhat generic. What specifically could the truths have been that actually led these men to kill him?
Well, I can't speak for what got him killed, Vasu, because I don't know which militant organization, which organization is behind this. What it is that motivated them to attack him the way they did yesterday.
Sure.
The fact that Shujaat has been outspoken in terms of the need for peace in Jammu and Kashmir, the need for dialogue. He was equally critical of the militant attacks on police personnel and others, as he was critical of the excessive use of force against protesters. He has been a consistent votary for the need for a dialogue between New Delhi and Jammu and Kashmir, and also he was part of the track two dialogue process between India and Pakistan. He has been a consistent advocate of a dialogue between India and Pakistan as well.
Right.
So on the face of it, there's nothing that jumps out at you, because he wasn't the sort who took sides. I mean,
Yeah.
He reported the stories, he said what he had to. Oftentimes what he said would have been somewhat unpalatable to the national mainstream in this part of the world, and sometimes what he said would have been unpalatable to our neighbor across the border in Pakistan. So, I mean, I don't know what it is that he said that finally pushed these people to attack him and assassinate him the way they did yesterday.
I know. I mean, I think we're all trying to make sense of it, and also depending, of course, on whatever information that we're getting in bits and pieces from the security forces. The name of the Lashkar-e-Toiba has been doing the rounds, but again, this is very, very preliminary. But it does appear, just based on those whatever images have been released and also the manner of the execution, that he was killed, it would appear, by one of the terrorist groups operating in the valley. So obviously it was, again, we're speculating here, but obviously it had to do something with the kind of language of peace that he was speaking of, that you mentioned.
Well, this is not the first time that people who have expressed an interest in dialogue or in peace have been killed like this. In the past also, you've had Abdul Ghani Lone,
Yes.
who was assassinated some years ago because he was believed to have been an advocate for peace, an advocate for dialogue. And there have been numerous other voices in the past that have been silenced in similar ways. Shujaat also seems to have been a victim of his desire for a negotiated settlement, for a dialogue. But I think it's also important, we need to know that, or understand that Shujaat wasn't a target of opportunity. It's not as if these people were waiting to see who would come by and just attack any random sort of vehicle
Sure.
that left the press club, the press colony. From all accounts, it seems that in this case it was meant for him. And one hopes that the police and the other intelligence agencies will be able to get to the bottom of this conspiracy, and we can find out exactly why this
Right.
organization, or whichever organization it was from the militant ranks, why it was that he was targeted.
Right. In
I
fact,
think it's also one of the other aspects that will need to be looked at is how these people were able to roam around so freely in Srinagar. Just
Yeah.
24 hours before Shujaat was killed, I had been told by my colleagues that the police had mentioned that in that part of Srinagar, 2 armed militants were spotted or seen 24 hours earlier. So again, it would suggest that these people were not only free to move around, they recce'd the area, and then when they spotted Shujaat, they finally targeted him.
right. Now, of course, Pakistan has not been able to resist the temptation to try and fish around in troubled waters, tweeting about the fact that Shujaat was killed because one of the last tweets he sent out was about that UN human rights report that was, in a sense, critical of the track record of both governments. And you, of course, immediately kind of tweeted back at them, saying that this is quite unacceptable. Subsequently, it appears deleted that tweet.
Must have done, but then I'm not surprised. They have consistently and always wanted to fish in the troubled waters of Kashmir. Look, Shujaat was not the only person to tweet that United Nations, that UN human rights report. A lot of other people did, not only from within Jammu and Kashmir, but also from the rest of the country as well. I mean, for God's sake, how stupid do we have to be to believe that Shujaat would have been targeted for a tweet about a report that was put out by this by the human rights organization? So many of us spoke about it, so many of us talked about it, a lot of people tweeted about it. So to link Shujaat's killing to a United Nations report, I think is absurd in the extreme.
Right. Umar, this has been a very bloody past couple of days because it's Shujaat who was killed as well as his security officers. There was also, one of the members of the security forces, Aurangzeb, abducted and killed. The Deputy Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir just told me, just a short while ago that there's no question of extending the Ramzan ceasefire. Do you think that makes sense at this point?
But I think we need to understand that the decision to extend the Ramzan ceasefire will be taken far above the pay grade of the Deputy Chief Minister. I don't think he's even in the consultative process for this sort of a decision.
Right.
It will be taken at the level of the Prime Minister's office and nowhere else. They obviously need to look at the situation in its entirety, to what extent the ceasefire has helped the situation, to what extent, if at all, the situation has deteriorated during this period of the ceasefire, and then take an informed decision. I'm no longer Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. I'm not privy to the intelligence reports that allowed them to announce this ceasefire in the run-up to Eid, and I wouldn't be privy to the intelligence reports that they'll be receiving now.
Okay. Last question to you. We've seen that the Home Minister has come out and tweeted very strongly expressing his condemnation at, at Shujaat Bukhari's killing. Some are questioning why the Prime Minister has not taken note of it, at least so far. Fair to ask that question?
Well, fair to ask the question, but then we also know that the Prime Minister has been known to be selective in the subjects that he tweets about and the speed with which he responds. This is not the first time even a Jammu and Kashmir related matter has received a delayed response from the Prime Minister, or in some cases no response at all. I mean, it's for him to decide whether he wants to speak up. The fact that the Home Minister has spoken, the fact that the Vice President of India has expressed condolences, and so many others have, I think makes the silence of the Prime Minister all the more glaring. But he is the master of his own Twitter handle, and only he can decide when and how it will be used.
Right, and he well might do that, but we'll have to wait and see. Omar Abdullah, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Vasu.
Okay, also on the show tonight with us is Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain, who is the former GOC of the 15th Corps, heading the army in the Kashmir Valley formerly, and Jyoti Malhotra, Editor, National and Strategic Affairs, The Print. Now, General Hasnain, thanks for joining us. What do you make of this attack on Shujaat Bukhari? Because we're still trying to understand who it could be. The name of the Lashkar-e-Toiba has been bandied about, but nothing that confirms it. But what do you think the purpose was by going after a journalist?
See, I think I'm quite clear in one aspect. This happened in Srinagar. It happened by day. And normally in Srinagar, we have seen more and more operations of the Lashkar-e-Toiba. More Pak-based, Pakistan-sponsored terrorists rather than the local terrorists who at the moment have been primarily functioning in South Kashmir. So from that angle, conjecture, nothing more than that, I would say is probably a handiwork of one of the Pakistan-based terrorist organizations. And why do I believe in that is, you see, over a period of time, we have been stating that the local terrorists are now regaining the ground. The presence of the foreign terrorists has taken a beating. There have been a lot of attempts at infiltration to try and push in more foreign terrorists so that North Kashmir will probably see a greater footprint of them. They have not succeeded. Right. So possibly this is an old methodology of the Lashkar, where they always try and show the flag by doing some high-profile act. If you go back in history of the last 20-25 years, you will always see that they have tried to show their presence in an area through a high-profile act. You see, someone like Shujaat Bukhari, a very respected journalist, a middle-path journalist who was a voice of sanity and reason. Obviously, when I've even read his first piece in the Rising Kashmir immediately at the announcement of the ceasefire or the suspension of operations. And we found that in that also he was actually advocating to Pakistan, advocating to the separatists to take this entire piece of virtue more seriously. I don't think people have liked his advisories too much. And from that angle, it is possible that his elimination was primarily to send home a message that the Lashkar is very much still in control. They're very much here. And lastly, on this issue, if you see the first 25 days of the Ramzan suspension of operations, the intensity of incidents was not so high.
Right.
It's in the last 5-6 days that we saw suddenly an upsurge. Obviously, a message had come across from the other side.
Right.
This also includes the ambush of the BSF at the international border, where you found the killing of 4 BSF Jawans, and simultaneously with the killing of Aurangzeb Khan, and now with this killing of Shujaat Bukhari. All this is a package probably to send home a message that suspension of operations is not something which Pakistan or the sponsors or the deep state is willing to look at.
Right. Jyoti, as General Hasnain says that Shujaat's killing comes in what has been a fortnight of violence, the numbers actually suggest that there has been a spike in violence during the ceasefire. But it is though somewhat surprising, isn't it? Because journalists haven't been targeted in this manner in Jammu and Kashmir for a long time, and to go after somebody who has been, while an advocate for peace, has certainly not been someone who could in any way be labelled a sort of a proxy or a stooge of the Indian state, does seem worrying, surprising and worrying.
You're absolutely right, Vasu. But you know, the first thing I'd like to say here is that when I came to your show, was that you know, in any other situation, if something was happening in Jammu and Kashmir, you would have called Shujaat, and he would have been here on this show, on your show, discussing what was happening. And today we're talking about him and his really unfortunate and brutal murder. And you're absolutely right that this is after a long time that the press has been targeted in Jammu and Kashmir. And you remember, Vasu, that Shujaat himself has been in the past, he escaped 2 such attempts. There was some years ago, if you remember, he was in an auto and they fired at him and he sort of, you know, managed to escape.
Yes.
So I think Shujaat knew that, you know, he continued to live in Srinagar. He continued to live in this conflict zone. And remember, the conflict in Jammu and Kashmir has gone on for nearly 30 years. If we count the beginning, which was 1989, and it's going to be 30 years. And I think that's what is so upsetting about this whole thing, is that, you know, Shujaat was not a star in that sense, like several of you people on TV are. But the fact that he did his daily job, his sort of daily toil, writing the story, pushing the middle ground, telling people that this is why there must be peace in the valley, whether it was the UPA, the Congress government 4 years ago, whether it is the PDP, BJP government in Kashmir, the BJP government in Delhi. I think the importance of Shujaat Bukhari was that as a journalist, he did his job. And he reflected, he wrote what he saw was happening on the ground. And I think that is what is needed not only today in the wake of his really unfortunate death, but on a daily basis. As journalists, as reporters, we have to report what's happening on the ground. You know, I remember very clearly some years ago, we were on one of these track 2 seminars in Islamabad, and the Musharraf government had come to an end, that had given way to an elected government. But he told the elected representatives of Pakistan, where he said that, you remember there was this time when Pervez Musharraf and former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh almost came to some sort of a settlement on Jammu and Kashmir, that famous 4-point formula. And nobody in Pakistan liked what he said.
Right.
Similarly in Kashmir, the militants didn't like what he said. The Hurriyat, the separatists didn't like what he said.
Right.
The government didn't like what he said. The Congress party didn't like what he said when they were in power. But he spoke the truth. And I think this middle ground that he pushed was a hallmark of his journalism.
Right. Now, General, where does all of this leave us? Because you wrote a piece, I just read your piece, where you talked about how everything seems to be adrift. We don't know what's happening. The ceasefire now, it's fairly clear, is not going to be extended. Fine. But what happens next?
See, Srinivas, the point is, if the suspension of operations is now abrogated, it's not going to be in place anymore, I think the first priority for all of us is the Amarnath Yatra, which is coming up in the next 10 days. Now, you will consider this a very tactical consideration, but I am worried about that, because that's the next big event coming, and it gives a period of almost 6 to 8 weeks for people to get their act together to do something to target the Yatra. And obviously, the decision by the government has been taken in consideration of the fact that if the army is held back and cannot carry out its domination operations in preparation for the Amarnath Yatra, then it's going to be a very risky thing. So that's point number one. The second issue is, I think we need to connect this to the ceasefire on the line of control and the IB.
Right.
I think it needs to be very clear. On the tactical side, there is no connection, but strategically, there's a huge connect.
Right.
We can't have a situation in which on one fine day we decide to implement the 2003 ceasefire, and where in the next 2-3 days you find a barrage of fire from the Pakistani side, an actual ambush of BSF soldiers taking place at the IB.
Right.
Either we should go whole hog for a ceasefire or not at all. I think that's the second point I wish to make. The third point which I want to particularly emphasize upon is that there is a notion somewhere that as if we can only conduct hard operations, or we have to stop the hard operations and conduct soft operations of outreach to people, allowing the politicians to go back to their constitutions, etc. I think we have always in the past done both together. I don't see why we can't continue that even now. We hold back a little bit. We ensure that the army, the security forces get their act together to allow the politicians to go back to their constituencies. We have a lot of outreach programs. We have a lot of reach out to the youth. And all that has just been happening in the past continues as it is. Why should there be only a single dimensional kind of an approach to conduct hard operations?
Right. Okay, we're actually out of time. Thank you both so much for joining us on the show tonight. We'll have to leave it there. That's it on Left, Right and Centre. Thanks for watching. Good night.